welcome to video 3. So this is our final video today, and then you can join us again tomorrow for the next lot of videos. So straight into the artists, we've got Emily Hyam first, and Emily is a jeweller, and you'll see from the image here that she is an enamel jeweller. So she actually uses 2 different types of enamelling to create this layered effect, and her pieces really explore colour and pattern. She uses very simple forms so that colour and pattern and the surface design can really shine. The surface design is actually inspired, if you look very closely you'll see, by honeycomb and the sort of shapes and patterns that you can see in beehives. They're very organic in nature, they've got a real sense of sort of natural colours and forms, and they're really beautiful pieces.
We've also got a jeweller up next, but you can see as we start to bring up the pictures of Emily Thatcher's work, it's completely different. And I always think it's really interesting when you see how different people can make their work when they're using the same medium. So Emily Thatcher describes her jewellery as contemporary sculptural jewellery, and you can really see why. She's very interested in the space between the work and within the work, considering the negative and the positive space in and around. She uses precious metals and stones, and her styling is quite exacting. She's got a real eye for the detailing.
Next up we've got Erica Just, who is an artist, an illustrator and a paper maker. You can see from this image here just how beautifully delicate and detailed Erica's work is. She works with watercolours and she uses the wet on wet technique, which allows a lovely flow and softness to her work. Her work is predominantly inspired by meadows and hedgerows and florals that you might find out in your garden or on a walk at the weekend.
We move on now to Iram Amir, a ceramicist who uses porcelain to create sculptures. They are intricate, they are hand-built, and they use very limited tools, which basically means that when she's saying they're hand-built, they pretty much are her using her hands to create these tiny details that go onto each of these vessels. They've got such a sense of movement, but also a fragility, a sense of delicacy, and each piece is very organic. So it's very obviously inspired by nature, sea forms, things like that, but it's also the spontaneity that she uses in her work. They're not planned out beforehand, they happen. They're an experience.
Next we've got Fiona Wilson, who is a printer and a maker as well. Now Fiona's work is all about colour and pattern. She creates these quirky, bold designs. They've often got a sense of fun or humour to them. She works both in paper, in 2-dimensional work, where she will screen print and collage. She also works in 3-dimensional work using wood, where she can actually build a form, so creating a 3D piece that could go on a shelf. All of her work it just makes me want to smile. It's got a real sense of just happiness to each piece.
Our next artist is Gabriella Buckingham. She is a fine art painter and she is very influenced by colour. She's working from life, intuition, memories, experiences, and the mark making and the way that she uses the flow of the brush and the paint in the work It's really evocative, and there's a real sort of sense of stories within the work as well. I feel with Gabriella's work, you could have one of her paintings for ages and then still be seeing something new in it as the years went by.
And we've got Gabriella Petruso now, who is an illustrator. And Gabriella's work just, again, she's one of those artists whose work just makes me smile. She uses ink and watercolour and pencil to illustrate this myriad of quirky animal characters. Gabriella does a lot of work for illustration of books, and I think you can see why, because her work just absolutely lends itself to that storytelling and that quality of bringing out the real personality of each animal or character that she creates. Her use of colour as well is lovely, and she really captures the lifelike kind of movement and essence of each animal, and a sense of humour as well. There's always kind of, the animals are always kind of making you smile and laugh a little bit.
We move on now to Hannah Turlington. She is an artist who uses lino to create stories and narrative. It's in essence, it's like a moment or a memory or a thought of life recorded into lino. Her work is very evocative, evoking memories and experiences and connections. She uses a very particular colour palette. This is obviously just a black and white image, but sometimes she'll use like just red or just green, and even that in itself, it's very striking. There's something as well about the languaging that Hannah uses. It's the things that are said and the things that are left unsaid. That for me personally is really special about Hannah's lino work.
Next, we've got Hazel Battersby, who is an artist, and she creates abstract landscape paintings. And just from looking at this image here, you can really see how Hazel's painting is really about exploring expressive qualities, and she balances this with just this most amazing use of colour and line. And there's just so many layers to all of her images. She uses mark making, collage. She'll layer piece upon piece and maybe strip back areas to reveal some of the layers underneath. So you've got this beautiful depth and kind of patina to each piece that she does. And again, these could easily be a statement piece, and these would look just absolutely beautiful against a really dark backdrop, a really beautifully painted wall.
So we're on to Henrietta Corbett, who is a sculptor and also a painter. Her work is always inspired though by ancient finds. So she might be using a different language, as in a different material, or it might be 2D sometimes or 3D, but it's always inspired by ancient finds. Sometimes lines in the landscape, sometimes animals, sometimes birds. And she also uses bronze casting when she's doing sculpture. I think for me, it's the way that she'll capture these quite stylistic horses in the 2D and in the 3D. And I could really imagine how powerful it would be to have a painting and also to have a sculpture of her work in the same space.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, grouping them together again, like we mentioned
absolutely.
before. Next on to Izzy Williamson, who Izzy was one of our Raw Talent artists in 2020, and Izzy she's an illustrator and a printmaker. She specialises in lino cuts, and her lino cuts are just so intricate. Those of you who know how lino cuts are created will just see the quality in Izzy's work. It's really delicate, very intricately done, and she takes her inspiration from folklore, from mythology, and just from those stories that are passed down through generations. She kind of brings them to life within her lino cuts. She's got a great sense of colour as well, and some of her linos are multiple linos to create them, so they're layer upon layer of different colours, each one adding a part to that image. So very complicated and very intricate to do, and I think they've just got they've got a sense of history to them and a sense of storytelling, and you kind of want to know what the characters in each piece are about.
And finally, for our last artist in this video, we've got James Bywood. He's a printmaker, and he is also an award-winning illustrator. His screen prints, as you can see here, absolutely capture the Yorkshire landscape. I know that recently as well he's been doing some more work which is more internal, inspired by his experiences of lockdown. So we've got landscape here, but I also know that he's got some quite a lot of variety in the way that he's been working in the last year or so. But in the end, what really brings all of James's work together is his evocative sense of place. It's always about where he is, and I think we can all connect with that, especially after this weird old bonkers 18 months that we've had. That sense of place and sense of self within a place is so important. So, bit of a heavy moment there from me. We're going to end on something a bit lighter. We've had an absolutely lovely time talking about the artists today. We'll be back tomorrow morning with video 4, 5 and 6. We really hope that you can join us. Remember, you can watch all these videos again and again and laugh at all the bits that we get wrong. And yeah, we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.